Well, good morning. Let me extend my welcome to worship this morning. My name's Adam Hildebrand. I get to be one of the pastors here at LVfirst. And whether you're joining us here in person or you're joining us online, we are excited to be together on this fourth Sunday of Advent as we prepare our hearts and minds for all that's to come in the next few days, for all of the Christmas celebrations, for all of the Christmas Eve worship services, for all the different opportunities we have to gather together as family and friends in all sorts of places. Lots of stuff to do and lots of things to wrap and to get ready and to prepare. But thank you for being here to prepare your hearts for all of it. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody. Lawrenceville Lights, we wrapped up last night, and the last two nights were really, really cold. I don't know if you noticed that, but it was really cold. It was really cold out there, and just so many people came out and served and loved and showed up and invited other people. We had right at 4,000 cars come through Lawrenceville Lights over 2 weekends, which is just incredible. So, somewhere around 15,000 of your closest friends came out and enjoyed the campground in some way, shape, or form. And so it's an incredible thing to see. So if you helped set that up, if you volunteered at any of the nights that we were open, if you thought about it, if you drove by it and said, I'm glad I'm not in that line, if you liked it on Facebook, if you did any of those things, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I assume that if you thought about it, volunteered, helped out, liked it on Facebook, that you'll be there in the next couple weeks as we tear it down, right? Yes. If you had any questions about that, Daphne was the one who was wooing. You can see her and talk to her about that. So we've got that going on. We're sharing the light of Christmas with our community. And then at the same time, yesterday, we had Christmas extravaganza. So over 200 kids in our community have Christmas because of you. And it was so good to be down there yesterday and just to talk to some of the families as they came through and to hear about their gratitude to you for the ways that you invest in this community and the ways that you invested in their family and the dignity that it gave them as a family to come and to shop themselves, to pick out gifts for their family and their kids. And so thank you for the ways that you invested in that. And all of those things, like McCade said, are made possible by the ways that you give and live so intentionally. And so as you think about year-end giving, I want to encourage you to kind of calibrate that in relationship to the ways that we continue to serve and love this community, and to make sure you're thinking about your church as we're preparing for the end of the year, as we're trying to make sure that we're all prepared to head into 2025 in a place of strength, and just lots of things going on, lots of stuff to celebrate, and we're looking forward to the new year. I can't wait. I love Christmas. I'm so excited about Christmas, but I'm also excited about next year. We've got some big plans for all of you, and it's going to be a fantastic year of worship together. And so if you're here this morning, congrats. You made it through the longest night of the year. It only gets lighter from here. Isn't that good news? Yeah. Okay. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's good that it gets lighter from here. And, I think as we celebrate the light of Christ made known in the world over the next few days, as we hold candles in the air and we see that light that's come into the world, it's so good for us to think about the fact that the darkness cannot overcome the light, and that you carry that light with you everywhere you go. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about this idea of ornamental, these mentalities that we can bring to Christmas that might help us to experience the true meaning of Christmas, what Christmas is really all about, the way that we're supposed to see this season and the way that it's supposed to change our lives, not just for 4 weeks out of the year, not just for the month of December, not just post-Thanksgiving, but each and every day, that there are things about this season that remind us, that tell us that if we take on into our lives, shape everything else. So we've talked about hope, and we've talked about peace, and we've talked about joy. And today we want to spend some time talking about love. Now, every family has some unique Christmas traditions, right? All families have them. I don't know what yours are. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of ours because everybody's got them, especially around Christmas presents, about the way that gifts are opened. Some people open gifts on Christmas Eve. Any Christmas Evers? Okay, one. All right, good. Any Christmas Dayers? Everybody else Christmas Dayers? Okay, yeah. Good. Okay. I don't know which one's right. It's okay. Whenever you do it, you just do it. But in our family, like we open on Christmas morning, on Christmas Day, and we have to wait until everybody is at the designated house, which happens to be our house because I work on Christmas Eve. And so everybody has to come to me the next day. Like, that's just how this works. If I'm going to be up until midnight, you got to come to my house. So all of our family comes to our house, and we don't let our kids come downstairs and see the Christmas tree until everybody's there, which is fine for my two older teenagers who would sleep all day if they could. But my youngest, he wakes up at the crack of dawn on Christmas Day and is ready, sometimes before the crack of dawn, sometimes before dawn has even thought about cracking. He is in our room like, is it time yet? No, it's not time yet. Go back to bed, right? And so we rehearse that over and over and over. And so eventually everybody gets to the house. And I've seen some people, like, we're not these people, but I've seen some people who go the extra mile and like put wrapping paper over the door that the kids are going to come through. So the kids get to come in like it's a football game, right? Like, you burst through the door and then there's all the stuff under the tree. We don't do all that, but we do let them come down together. And over the last few years, it's been late enough that at that point, everybody's hungry, and so they see the tree, they see all the presents, and we're like, all right, let's eat breakfast. We just like to drag this out as long as possible. This is an all-day process. And so, we finally get everybody together, and the gifts have to be distributed in a very specific way. Like, only one person can be the gift distributor. We don't do the all-call, like, everybody rush to the tree and open all your stuff and wrapping paper flying everywhere. This is very neat and orderly. Okay? Everybody's got to watch you open your present and watch your face to make sure that you enjoy it, which means that you've got to, like, tell your face to lie. Right? So we get the gift, we give it to the person, they look at the card, hopefully it's got the name on it, and then in our family, we often put riddles on the gifts that kind of hint at what it might be, and we try to make them funny or entertaining or something about the gift or them and why it makes sense. And our kids have tried this, and they're not good at it yet, which makes it that much better. Like, when the riddle has nothing to do with the gift, it makes it that much more entertaining. And so that's kind of been our tradition. I remember one time when I was younger, me and my siblings and my mom, we all gathered around. It was Christmas morning, and all the gifts were there, and we picked up the first gift. Like, I've been the gift distributor for a really long time. Until the last couple of years, I've let my kids do it. But, like, when I was a kid, I was the gift distributor, and I grabbed the first present, and I lifted it up, and there was a riddle, but there was no name. There's a riddle, but no name. And so, like, I read the riddle, and we had to, like, guess who this present was for. And then we picked up the next one, and I flipped the card open, and there was a riddle, but no name. And so my mom, in all of her busyness, had forgotten to put the names of the kids on the gifts, which made it so much more fun. Right? Trying to figure out what my mom was thinking in her sleep-deprived state after working, doing all the things that she was doing. Like, well, why are these riddles on here, and who are these for? And so there was lots of, like, opening gifts and going, oh, a curling iron. I've had the same haircut since I was 14. Never needed a curling iron. This must not be for me. There's lots of, like, opening stuff and going, no, this isn't for me, this is for you, and whose name was supposed to be on this. And it was so much fun. It was so entertaining. And it was just a great time trying to figure out who each gift was for. And gifts are a funny thing because oftentimes they communicate a real sense of care. They communicate that we've listened well, or we've thought about that person uniquely and individually. We get something for them, and it just really, you can tell that it's meaningful. And then there's other times where you open something and you're like, thanks. You shouldn't have. For real, you shouldn't have. Did you keep the receipt by any chance? Like, did you keep is that a good, okay, never mind, I'll figure it out. Sometimes those things become regifts. We wrap them up and take them somewhere else. We give them to somebody else. We do something else with them. Put them in a closet. We forget about them. But I think there's one thing that's worse even than getting that gift that didn't quite land right. It's when somebody opens something and there's just no response at all. You took time to buy this thing. You took time to go shopping. You took time to get on Amazon and order it and have somebody bring it to your house. You took time to open up that brown box, break down that brown box, stack it up so that you've got a big, you took all the time to do this. And you give them something and it's just like, okay. And it kind of gets left to the side. The sense of indifference towards this gift. You feel silly for having bought it. You feel silly for having given it. You just feel bad. And so does the person who got it. They're just not sure what to do in that circumstance. This lack of response feels hurtful. My kids have this phrase that I think describes this. My kids, when they talk about a text message that hasn't been responded to, they say that they've left us on red. Do you know about this? Did I use that correctly, guys? Yeah. So you get a text message and on your iPhone it says that person has read the text message, but they haven't responded. Why didn't they respond? What's going on? Did I upset them with the last thing that I said? What? And you start running through all these things. You got left on red and now you don't know what to do because there's no response to what you've said and you're so confused and you're so worried and it turns out that they were just busy. But all you're thinking is, why did I get left on red? It feels like they don't care. And maybe the thing that you can communicate that with the most is by not responding, by leaving someone on red. If you want them to know that you're not concerned about what it is that they're talking about, you can just leave them on red. Now, my generation of grunge music and punk rock, we had this great phrase that we used all the time. Whatever. Whatever. I mean, like everything. How do you feel about that? It's whatever. Just whatever. And this idea of whatever and this idea of apathy and this idea of indifference, they're all connected in our world. And it seems like because we're so overwhelmed, because we've got so many things going on, because we've got so much coming at us all the time, that this sense of apathy and indifference has just grown in our culture. I feel like more often than not, we're just left on red. And we're not sure what to do with that. And sometimes that becomes a part of the way that we think about God. This sense of apathy or indifference. Because we don't feel like there's a connection. We don't feel like there's something that really is making a difference in our lives. We don't feel that sense of communication. We don't feel the love. We feel left on red. Elie Wiesel, who is a Holocaust survivor, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and an amazing author, said one time that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It's indifference. He went on to say that indifference is at the heart of all human suffering. And to think about it this way means that a gift given out of love can't be received with just indifference, or shouldn't be received with indifference. It might not be the gift that we've always dreamed of. It might not be the thing that we've always wanted. But it always demands a response in some way. Because love always demands a response. Love requires a response. When we give something out of love, when we give love away, it requires something in return, some sort of return engagement. Good, bad, or otherwise, we need to know where we stand when we give love. Otherwise, we're not sure what to do. We don't know what it means when we get left on red. As we look at our scripture today, what we see is this group of people who were given a gift that they didn't expect to get. And they're not sure what to do with it. The story goes like this. It'll be familiar to you. In that region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by by night. Again, in this culture, shepherds were on the fringe of society. They were unlovable people. They were people that nobody thought, you know who I'm inviting to dinner tonight? The shepherds. Like, kind of in our minds, we think about shepherds in terms of like the Christmas pageants that we do, cute kids with shepherd's crooks that poke each other during the play. And they walk in with other cute kids who are dressed as sheep, like a pillowcase stuffed with cotton. And so we think about it in terms of these cute little kids, like kind of a Charlie Brown kind of way. We don't think about the reality of being a shepherd, especially a night shepherd. Like, these are not just the daytime shift shepherds. These are the night shift shepherds. So, like, they're not the best shepherds. They're kind of the low end of the shepherds because they're working the night shift. And they're out there walking around following sheep. And if you're following sheep, you know what you get on your shoes? You get sheep stuff. And so nobody wants the sheep stuff in their house, right? And even worse, they weren't allowed to be a part of worship in the temple. Now, these shepherds who cared for the very animals that were required to make the sacrifices at the temple weren't allowed in the temple because they were unclean. They had followed the sheep around. They touched dead things all the time. You got to deal with dead sheep. You got to deal with this. You got to deal with that. And so they weren't allowed to come into worship. Can you imagine being the very people who facilitate worship, but you're not allowed to go? How that would make you feel? How indifferent you would become to the whole process? How much you would feel like, yeah, it's whatever. It's just a job. It's just what I do. No emotional connection, no care for it. You live on the fringe of society. Then an angel appears to them. An angel appears to them. In verse 9 it says this, the angel of the Lord stood before them. And I'm sure that they were scared because these guys who live on the edge of society, like they were so bad that their testimony wasn't even allowed in court. Like nobody believed them. They were known liars and thieves. And an angel of the Lord stands before them. And if you're on the outside of society, if you've been told by everybody that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy to go into the temple, that you're not worthy to worship the God who wants to connect with you, if you've been told your testimony doesn't count your whole life, if an angel of the Lord shows up to you, you are scared. You're like, oh man, this is like the ultimate call to the principal's office. This angel's about to tell me all the things I've done wrong. This angel's about to tell me why I can't be a part of things. This angel's about to tell me some bad news. The angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, don't be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news. To which they were a little surprised. What's the good news? The good news of great joy for all the people. For all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is the Messiah, the Lord. And this will be a sign to you that you'll find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angels a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom he favors. And the shepherds were like, who's this gift for? That was a really confusing riddle on this present, and there's no name. So we don't know who this gift is for, but it's not for us. I know the angel said, I'm bringing you good news of great joy for all the people, but we're not all the people, right? That's not us. We're not even allowed to go in the temple. This can't be good news for us. We can't be getting a Savior because we're not allowed in the place where we got to go to do the things to be saved. I just like to picture the shepherds at this moment, like just being overwhelmed and terrified and wondering, like, how do we engage with this? Like, well, I'm sure one of them was like, hey, man, we probably shouldn't have eaten those mushrooms out in the field the other day. Like, this is getting weird. Good news for us? They're like looking around to see if there's other people behind them that they didn't see before. It's got to be for them. This can't be good news for us. It can't be good news for all the people because we don't get good news. Given their situation, given their experience, I imagine they had a lot of questions. Many of us, I think, live our lives a little bit like the shepherds. The shepherds had been told time and time again that they were outside looking in, that they weren't worthy of love and care and invitation. And I think so many of us live our lives feeling like we are not lovable, that we are unloved. That either we've done something, we've experienced something has happened in our lives to make us feel like we just can't really experience love. And so as a result, we tend to push people away. We tend to do things. We tend to live into our unloving thoughts. Shepherds have been told they were outcasts and thieves and liars for long enough. What do they become? Outcasts and thieves and liars. And this unloving, self-fulfilling prophecy becomes a part of their lives in the same way that it becomes a part of our lives. We have such a difficult time receiving and giving love because we are so worried that we're going to be found out. People are going to figure out that things aren't exactly like we want them to be, that things are broken, that things are difficult. That somebody might see that crack in our lives, that place that we don't talk about, that brokenness, that thing that we think makes us unlovable. Growing up in a house where my dad just kind of took off on us, even though cognitively I know that's not my fault, even though I can, even as a kid, I could reconcile that in my head, the idea of being close to people, the idea of being loved by people was scary to me because I was constantly worried I was going to be abandoned. And so I remember a number of months into dating Michelle, who's my wife now. It worked out. Thanks to her, not to me. She said those 3 words that scared me the most. She said, "I love you." And I paused. And I said, "Thank you?" Which is not the response that she was looking for, just in case you're unclear about this. That's not the response that somebody's looking for when they say, "I love you." But there was this thing in me that wouldn't allow me to say that back at that because I was so afraid, because I thought that I was not able to love in the same way, that we weren't able to be on the same page on that. And it took time and years of working through that. So maybe you're here this morning and there's some childhood trauma, or you've spent your whole life trying to live up to some made-up ideal and you've failed time and time again, or maybe you just don't think you're good enough to be loved, or haven't truly experienced what real self-giving love looks like. What real, honest love looks like. Maybe you feel like you walk through your life as a fraud, just pretending to be something else. I've got good news of great joy for you. You are loved. This message It's not just for those shepherds who didn't feel like they were loved. It's for all of us who feel like we've been left out, we're not good enough, that we don't measure up, that we don't have enough, that we aren't enough. Whatever it is, this message of good news and great joy is for you and for me and for everyone else who feels like the shepherds at times. Because this kind of love changes everything for everyone and invites all of us to respond, because love demands a response. And the way God shows his love is not through gifts, not through presents, but through his very presence with us. Time and time again, the scriptures reiterate this reality that God gives himself for us out of love. The most famous verse that we see all the time, the one that most of us can quote, is John 3:16. We see it on big signs. Sometimes it's in big letters, like they're yelling or something. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, which includes the shepherds and includes you and me and everyone else. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. That this gift wasn't just something that you unwrap. It wasn't something that you get to play with. It wasn't a toy. It wasn't a car. It wasn't anything else. It was himself. God so loved all of us. He gave his son for us. And whoever, all of us get to be a part of whoever. The shepherds and everyone else gets to be a part of whoever. Whoever believes in him shall not perish but have life eternal, life to the fullest, life the best way that we can possibly live. This gift of love, this gift of God's presence for us transforms our lives now and forever. And all it takes is a mentality shift to realize that you are loved. It's one of the most difficult mentalities for us to hold on to realize that you are loved. So if you're here this morning and you haven't felt like you're loved, I want you to hear you are loved. If you've struggled with addiction, you are loved. If you've struggled to feel love, you are loved. If you're struggling with grief, you are loved. If you're feeling lonely this Christmas, you are loved. If you're having a tough time really feeling any Christmas cheer, it's okay. You are loved. If you have all the faith in the world, or if you have no faith at all, you are loved. Love shows up. Love shows up and it gives of itself. God gave. God came close, stepped into our world, stepped into our messiness, stepped into those places that make us feel so unlovable. Into that very present reality that all of us wrestle with. And when God shows up, it demands a response. So when the angels had left him, it says in verse 15, and gone into heaven, the shepherds looked at each other and said, what do we do now? I guess let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us, to make sure he wasn't kidding, to make sure this wasn't some sort of prank, to make sure that we actually are the ones that this message was for. So they went with haste, and they found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. And when they saw this, they made known what had been told them about this child. And everybody who heard it, they were all amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God. That God who they felt separated from, that God that they weren't allowed to worship with, that God that they weren't allowed to go to the temple, that God that hadn't shown up except to tell them that they were wrong, that God. Because they finally understood what God's love looked like. They were praising God for all that they had heard and seen as it had been told them. Their response was to go and to show up. So what will you do with the gift of love that you've been given? Because more often than not, love has legs. And God's present for all of humanity is his presence, and so we ought to be present for one another. The way that we live out of the gift of God's love is to love others, to share that love. It's the one gift that can be regifted without anybody's feelings getting hurt. A number of years ago, when Kmart was still open, that's how many years ago it was. They had this program called Layaway. I don't know if you guys know about Layaway, but like you can go and like pick out a gift early on in the year, put down a little bit of money, make some payments as you go. So we were working at a church in Augusta, and we got this wild hair of an idea. We're like, hey, like, what if we invite our people to go to Kmart, to the Layaway department, and just pay off some people's Christmas? And people did it. It was the wildest thing. Like we went and did it, and we did a couple. Like we just paid for like one or two gifts in their thing, and then other people started showing up from the church and paying off other things, and we paid off all of the layaways at the Kmart. And the next Monday morning, this lady showed up at our church, and she wanted to talk to a pastor. I happened to be the only one there. She came to my office. She said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Adam. I'm one of the pastors here." And she said, "Why did you pay off my layaway?" And I said, "Well, I don't think I did, but like somebody else from this church probably did." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because we love you." She's like, "You don't know me." I said, "I know. I don't need to know you. But I want you to know that you are loved." And this was a way for us to show you that we love you. She began to cry. She said, "Nobody has ever done anything like this for me." Because love shows up. It's what it does. It's present with people. As we're present with God and we know that we're loved, we're available to love others. That love becomes the very gift that we receive and the very gift that we get to give to others. It's the gift that we can give over and over and over again because we've received an abundance of God's love. You are worthy of receiving that love. The question is, will you accept it? And will you give it away? And after the mountains of wrapping paper are dealt with and the tinsel on the trees loses its sparkle, my prayer is that we would be a people who actively love others because we know that we have been loved by God.